The Fine Print. A Billionaire Boss Romance. Rowan Kane is New York's most ruthless billionaire, cold, controlling, and allergic to the word no. When his dying grandfather rewrites the will and leaves half of Kane Enterprises to a complete stranger, Rowan writes the one clause he's sure will send her running. She has to work as his personal assistant for an entire year, under his rules, his schedule, his command. Zahra Gulian is broke, stubborn, and has zero intention of letting some arrogant suit scare her off her inheritance. She signs the contract without reading the fine print. Big mistake, because the fine print says she moves into his penthouse. She's on call 24/7. She obeys every order, personal and professional. And the final line, written in Rowan's own handwriting, falling in love voids the agreement. What starts as a war of icy glares and sharp words across a glass desk quickly ignites into late-night meetings, stolen touches in private elevators and rules broken in the dark. Rowan tells himself it's just strategy. Keep her close, make her quit. Zahra tells herself she can hate him and still want him pressed against her at 2 a.m., but every signature on every page pulls them deeper. Every forbidden kiss makes the inheritance, and their hearts, harder to walk away from. 1 year, one contract, 2 people who weren't supposed to fall. When the final clause is revealed, only one question remains. Will they tear up the contract, or tear each other apart trying to keep it? The elevator dinged on the 18th floor like it did every weekday at noon, tired and indifferent. Zahra stepped out clutching a dripping umbrella and the last of her pride, shoes leaving faint wet marks on the worn gray carpet. Sweet 1820 smelled of burnt office coffee and the ghost of someone's egg and cheese bagel. Inside the small conference room, Rowan Kane was already waiting, jacket off, sleeves rolled once, leaning against the window with his phone in one hand and a look that said he had somewhere better to be. The estate lawyer, rumpled suit, tie slightly crooked, didn't waste time. He flipped to the marked page and read in the same bored tone he probably used for traffic tickets. 50% of the voting shares of Kane Enterprises to Miss Zahra Gulian, provided she accepts immediate employment as personal executive assistant to Rowan James Kane for a term of no less than 12 consecutive months. Residence and employer-provided housing required. Any breach forfeits the entire bequest. Rowan's eyes snapped to her, cold and unblinking. The phone lowered to his side. Zahra felt the words hit her chest like a fist. 50% of the company that paid for the lights on this floor and the rent on 3 others. To her, someone whose bank account currently sat at negative $43 and whose landlord had switched to all caps texts. Rowan crossed the room in 3 silent strides and set one sheet of plain printer paper in front of her. A blue Bic lay uncapped beside the dotted line. Her gaze snagged on the bullet points someone had bolded in Times New Roman. 24/7 availability. Company housing his building. 1 resignation. 0 inheritance. The lawyer stared at his shoes. Rowan spoke so softly she almost missed it over the hum of the vents. Sign or walk out right now and the money disappears forever. Her pulse roared in her ears. She pictured the eviction notice folded in her purse, the voicemail from her mom asking if she was eating, the way her hands shook every time her card declined at the bodega. 12 months. She could survive 12 months of anything. The cheap plastic pen scraped across the line. Zahra Gulian looked suddenly small under the buzzing fluorescence. Rowan took the page, folded it once, and slid it into his pocket like a receipt he already planned to use against her. When his gaze came back to hers, something dark and quiet flickered behind the ice. "Welcome to hell, Miss Gulian." Rowan didn't wait for her answer. He simply turned and walked out of the conference room expecting the world to follow. It did. Zahra followed too, legs moving before her brain caught up, the wet hem of her coat brushing her calves like a reprimand. The elevator ride down was silent except for the soft ping of passing floors and the faint scent of his cologne filling the small space. When the doors opened to the private parking garage, A black SUV idled at the curb, driver already holding the rear door. Rowan slid in without looking back. Zahra hesitated half a heartbeat, then climbed in after him because the alternative was standing alone in the concrete dark with nothing but an umbrella and a signature that had just sold her life. 20 rain-slicked minutes later, the car slowed in front of a sleek tower on East 57th. No doorman flourish, just a discreet brass plaque and a keypad. Rowan tapped with 2 fingers. The elevator here was different. Mirror-polished, silent, smelling faintly of sandalwood. It opened directly into the penthouse. Zahra stepped out and stopped breathing for a second. Floor-to-ceiling windows, the city glittering like spilled diamonds 43 floors below. Everything was charcoal and steel and edges sharp enough to cut. A single orchid, white, severe, sat on a table that probably cost more than her entire childhood home. Rowan shrugged out of his jacket, tossed it over a chair as if the furniture existed only to catch his things. He crossed to a sideboard, poured 2 fingers of something amber, didn't offer her any. Then he picked up a slim black tablet, woke it with a swipe and turned the screen toward her. A list glowed in crisp white text. Residence is permanent for the duration of the term. Personal belongings limited to 2 suitcases, contents subject to approval. Curfew 11 p.m. unless accompanying RJK on business. All communication devices provided by Kane Enterprises. Personal phone surrendered nightly by 10 p.m. Wardrobe allowance issued. Style direction non-negotiable. Guests prohibited without prior written consent. Breach of any rule constitutes immediate forfeiture. Zahra read it twice. Heat crawled up her throat. You're joking. Rowan took a slow sip, eyes never leaving her face. Do I look like I joke? She laughed, one sharp disbelieving sound. You want my phone, my clothes, my friends? This is insane. This is the fine print you didn't read. He set the glass down with a soft click that somehow sounded louder than shouting. You signed it. You live here now. My building, my rules, my schedule. Zahra stepped forward, anger overriding the fear that had kept her quiet in the car. I'm not your prisoner. Rowan moved faster than she expected. 1 second he was 3 feet away. The next he was close enough that she had to tip her head back to hold his stare. His voice dropped, velvet over steel. You're whatever I say you are for the next 365 days. Break one rule, just one, and you lose everything. The shares, the money, the miracle you think you need so badly. His gaze flicked down to her mouth and back up, something dangerous flickering there and gone. Try me, Zahra. I'm begging you to try me. The orchid trembled in the air currents between them. Outside, lightning cracked across the skyline, bleaching the room white for one heartbeat. Zahra's pulse hammered so hard she felt it in her fingertips. She opened her mouth, not even sure what weapon she planned to reach for. Rowan's phone buzzed on the counter. He didn't move to answer it. He simply held her stare, waiting, daring her to give him the excuse. The silence stretched until it felt like the city itself was holding its breath. Zahra swallowed the fire on her tongue. Not yet. Rowan's lips curved, barely. Good girl, he murmured, the words soft and ruinous. Then he turned away, already dismissing her, and the spell snapped like a cut wire. Somewhere in the cavernous penthouse, a clock began to chime the hour. Zahra stood rooted to the marble, the list still glowing on the tablet between them, and realized the first day had barely started. She was already in too deep to swim back. The penthouse was never truly dark. Even at 3 a.m, the city bled light through the glass, silvering the edges of furniture, turning the marble island into a pale, moonlit slab. Zahra lay rigid in the guest bed, too soft, too big, too quiet, eyes fixed on the ceiling, counting heartbeats instead of sheep. A soft chime cut the silence. Not her phone, hers was locked in some security drawer downstairs. The tablet on the nightstand glowed with a single line of text. Kitchen. Now. She stared at it until the screen dimmed, then flared again with the same 2 words. Her stomach flipped. 3:03 a.m. He was testing her already. Zahra swung her legs over the side of the bed, bare feet hitting cold floor. She'd fallen asleep in the oversized t-shirt and cotton shorts the building concierge had left folded on the dresser. Her own clothes still in transit, apparently. No robe. No choice. The hallway stretched endless motion sensor lights blooming under her steps like accusations. When she reached the kitchen, Rowan was already there. He stood at the counter in low-slung black sweatpants and nothing else, spine a clean shadowed line beneath the city glow. One hand braced on the marble, the other held a mug that steamed faintly. The muscles across his shoulders shifted as he turned his head just enough to acknowledge her. "You're late," he said, voice rough from lack of sleep or something darker. "It's 3 a.m. "Exactly. I want coffee." He tipped his chin toward the espresso machine that probably cost more than her first car. "Double shot, no sugar. 2% milk steamed to 140. You'll figure it out." Zahra crossed her arms over the thin cotton clinging to her chest, suddenly aware of how little she was wearing and how much of him there was to see. "You have a machine that does this automatically. Press a button." Rowan set his mug down with deliberate care. "I have an assistant who does it. That's you." The silence pulsed. She felt the distance between them shrink, even though neither moved. The kitchen smelled of warm milk and something sharper. His skin, the faint trace of cedar that followed him everywhere. Zahra stepped forward, bare feet silent on the heated floor, and stopped an arm's length away, close enough to see the faint stubble along his jaw. The tension coiled in the set of his shoulders, close enough that the warmth coming off him reached her like a dare. She reached past him for the portafilter. Their arms brushed, cotton against bare skin, and the contact sparked like static. Rowan didn't step back. Neither did she. The machine hissed. Steam curled between them, thick and fragrant. Zahra kept her eyes on the cup, but every inch of her skin tracked the man beside her. The slow inhale through his nose, the way his fingers flexed once against the counter. She slid the finished cup toward him without looking up. Rowan's hand closed around it, slow, deliberate, knuckles grazing hers. The touch lingered half a second longer than it needed to. He lifted the cup, took a sip, eyes never leaving her face. "Acceptable," he murmured. Zahra's pulse thundered in her throat. She should step away, should say something sharp and safe and go back to the guest wing. Instead, she stayed, pinned by the weight of his stare and the sudden, impossible heat pooling low in her stomach. Rowan set the cup down. His hand lifted, slow enough that she could have moved, fingertips brushing a damp strand of hair from her cheek, tucking it behind her ear with a gentleness that felt like violence. His thumb lingered at the corner of her mouth. Zahra's breath caught hard enough to hurt. Rowan leaned in until his lips almost touched hers, until she felt the warmth of his exhale and the scrape of stubble and the tremor neither of them would admit to. Then he stopped, pulled back a fraction, voice barely sound. That wasn't in the contract. The words sliced the air between them, cold and final. He stepped away first, taking the heat with him, leaving her standing in the sudden chill of the kitchen, with steam still curling from the abandoned machine. Rowan walked past her without another glance, disappearing down the hallway like the almost kiss had never happened. Zahra stayed rooted to the marble, fingers pressed to her mouth, tasting coffee and the ghost of what might have been, while the city kept burning its indifferent light through the windows. 3:09 a.m., and the night had only just begun.